took so long for us to put out another episode is because I had to pick up all of my stuff and then move it to another location and then have all my stuff situated, and that's finally happened today, kind of.
Mostly.
Mostly. I mean, this is a process that I expect to be going through over at least the next month. But, you know, everything's in place to at least record. Hooray!
Hooray!
And you know what, Neil?
What?
It's good to be back.
Hey, it's good to have you back. We definitely tried to do a little bit of playing some games together and ran into some issues trying to do it without all your setup back to where it needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess we'll get into the specifics later on. But how have you been, man?
I've been okay. You know, I have complained both on and off the podcast about how bad I am at dealing with the heat.
Mm-hmm.
And during the time that you were moving, I finally spent the $300-something on getting an air conditioner.
It's worth it.
Yeah, it's been real nice since then. I've tried not to run it when I don't have to, but then there've been days like today where I basically ran it all day until right now, so it's not making a big ass noise behind me.
I got a kind of an embarrassing admission in the vein of air conditioners.
Oh.
So, my last place, the place that I just moved from, has central air.
Oh.
So, it really, really great, nice and quiet system that just keeps it wherever you want it to be all the time. And that was very convenient, and also that place was expensive.
Yeah.
For it.
Yeah.
You know, you pay for convenience, especially out here in sunny California. And so the place that I was moving to had no air conditioning. Nothing already there, nothing centralized. So I had bought a machine ahead of my move to kind of like even things out a little bit. And, you know, it was doing its job. It was chugging along. But I started to realize I have a lot of things that are a little sensitive to temperature. And, you know, when you start to get above 90, the idea of like leaving those kind of things in a room without any sort of climate control, it's kind of unnerving. You know, I have collectibles. It's infuriating to me that I have so many collectibles now that I've just moved. You know, one of the things that I learned from this move is that maybe I don't need so many things, but because I do have things, I wanted to make sure that they would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bought a second air conditioner. And I went ahead and set that up in the bedroom, which is also very nice. But, you know, for the purposes of the podcast, I don't think that either of us can really justify running it.
No. So we gotta cut this short enough that neither of us overheat.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're recording pretty late here.
Yeah.
That was kind of like where I was at in terms of like how we're gonna be able to conduct this without melting into a sweaty little puddle.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it's been basically a month.
It has. We have a lot to talk about, so we're going to kind of try to jump into it a little bit here. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Audio Games Podcast. I am Neil.
And I'm Matt.
And Matt, I know you've been moving and didn't have a ton of time for games. I played a lot of them.
Yeah.
But
thanks. Great, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Love more of that, please.
You're welcome. But did you find time to play anything?
Yeah, actually, I was anticipating recording an episode with my laptop, like, much earlier this month. And so I was like, oh my god, oh no, I don't have anything to talk about, I need to play something. And so, I actually got a Super Metroid ROM hack.
Oh. That
I had heard about, through the grapevine, so to speak. And that particular Super Metroid ROM hack was called Super Junkoid.
I'm interested.
And yeah, so I mean, if you're not familiar, ROM hacks are basically like this. There's a community of people who really enjoy video games, and so they'll basically scrap a game down to its like gameplay components, and then change levels and layouts and sprites and all sorts of things at a code level so that you can apply a patch to a game and then all of a sudden it's a different game. This is very prolific with like Super Mario worlds specifically.
Oh yeah.
Super Mario Bros. 3 to a lesser degree, but yeah. If you ever heard of like Kaizo, that's kind of like where the term came about. And then Nintendo, being Nintendo, they were like, well, we could probably cash in on this, and then they made Super Mario Maker, which is essentially ROM hacking without hacking the ROM. So it's kind of that kind of thing. But Super Junkoid, how can I explain it? It's kind of like it's like a very dark. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The name of the game, Axiom Verge. Okay, that's right. So it's kind of like Axiom Verge, but it's also kind of like Toho.
Oh.
Not so much in the gameplay, but in like the way that it presents itself. Okay, so think you play as a little girl.
Sure.
Named Junko. That's the Japanese name, which is why it's called Super Junkoid. It's not like about junk. It's about a girl named Junko. But apparently she saved a snake after it got like hit by a car or was injured or something. And ever since she saved the snake, she's been having these terrible dreams. And it turns out like the snake is causing these bad dreams, or like causing her to get trapped in these dreams, because it wants to worship her. And the only way that it can like keep her is by trapping her in these dreams. And so the whole goal is that you're trying to get out of this weird dreamscape. So, I mean, I guess it's kind of like Yume Nikki and Axiom Verge, actually. So, weird, dark, certainly not what I was expecting looking at the cover, you know? I saw like the cute little sprite work, I was like, oh, okay. And then it just gets really dark after that. So, really great layout, good flow. If you like the Metroidvania style games, I mean, this is literally built on top of the skeleton of Super Metroid. It's certainly one of the highest rated, more recent ROM hacks for Super Metroid. There's a whole website for Super Metroid ROM hacks, and it was near the top, and I was like, okay, well, we'll give it a shot. And yeah, I played it all the way through. Didn't do 100%, but I will give a warning to those of you who may want to pick this up. There's a lot of gore. Yeah, a lot of psychological horror, trauma stuff, but still really solid in the gameplay. Apparently, there was originally just a ROM hack for the original Metroid called Junkoid, and this is like the successor to that. So, I guess there's some sort of history there. But I'm not that super into the ROM hacking scene. I just I felt like playing Super Metroid, and I had heard about this, and I was like, okay, well, I could probably do this in like 2 sit-downs, and I did. So, I like a good Super Metroid game.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I think
Samus Returns was like the last 2D style, right?
That was the 3DS official remake?
The Switch one. Well, no, wait, no, the Switch. Which one was that?
Oh, Prime
Metroid
4 Remastered?
No, the 2D one with the parry. And
no, that was definitely the 3DS one. Oh, no, you're talking about Dread.
Yeah, Dread.
Dread, yes. Good game.
See, it's been so long since we've had a 2D Metroid that we can't remember the names of these games.
Yes.
Actually, to full disclosure, the reason I can't think about anything right now is because I've been thinking about the move Swift in Pokemon. I just need to get this off my chest, Neil. I know I'm being tangential here, but what the fuck is the move Swift? Like, what is that?
Isn't it?
Like, I remember it.
No, I'm thinking of Quick Attack. What does Swift do?
Swift. Okay, so that's the thing. Like, you would expect it to either be like makes your Pokemon go faster, or like something of a priority move like Quick Attack, but it's neither. Instead, it makes your Pokemon shoot out stars that never miss. Like, what does that have to do with the name Swift?
Right.
And then, like, if you ever watch the anime, like, they'll have Pokemon use Swift, and you're like, okay, well, maybe it was a limitation of, like, the hardware and the visuals of early video games that, like, they just kind of depicted as, like, a star thing. But no, they literally just shoot stars out of themselves, and it's bizarre. It's just a bizarre move that they call Swift. In the games, the whole point of Swift is like, you can't miss with this. Like, you can hit Pokemon that are digging or flying, no matter what, you will hit them. Like, there's like a special trigger in there that makes sure that the attack always hits, right?
Sure.
But then in the anime, there's times where it misses, and it's just like, what?
Okay, well, the anime making a move in the game miss, that's, whatever.
But it's the whole point of Swift is that it never misses.
Yeah, but who watching or who making the anime is going to care about that?
I mean, it's kind of an institution, Neil. You'd think that there would be someone. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking this.
I think you might be overthinking.
It's been bothering me. It's been bothering me. Why is it called Swift?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe like the Japanese word directly translates to Swift, but it has like a double meaning in Japanese or something.
Okay, so I looked it up, and the reason that it's called Swift in the States and it's like about shooting a star is because it's actually called Speed Star in Japan. So it is a naming convention thing.
Okay. I wonder. I'm gonna guess it got changed to Swift simply for like character space.
It might have got changed to Swift for character space, but also probably because they didn't know what the hell they were looking at because it was a Game Boy game. They're like, no, just call it Swift.
I mean, if you want to go down the, hey, why am I thinking about something fucking stupid like Swift?
Yeah, what's been on your mind, Neil? Like, it doesn't have to be specifically.
All right. This is kind of related. It also involves anime.
All right. Talk to me.
Anime from the same generation. An anime called Yu-Gi-Oh!
Okay. Yeah, no, I fucking... Didn't I talk about this last episode?
Well, I'm not really a Yu-Gi-Oh! Person.
Okay.
But... you know what I do really like?
What do you like, Neil? Do you like collecting?
Yes, but that's not what this is about.
Oh, okay.
No, I, for some reason, really enjoy watching people who are, like, really into one card game try to evaluate cards from a different card game that they don't play.
That's a very specific thing to like, but yes, I can understand.
I find it very entertaining.
Cool.
So I've maybe watched a few hours of people who play like Hearthstone trying to evaluate Yu-Gi-Oh cards and determine whether or not they think they were banned.
The thing about Yu-Gi-Oh cards is that they're incredibly cryptic in the way that...
They're fucking insane. Nothing costs anything, so everyone's just playing shit for free that, like, seems absolutely bonkers.
I mean, it's not that they cost nothing. There's certain things you need to, like, contribute to certain summons. But, yeah, it's very all over the place.
So, yeah. I went down that rabbit hole in the last week and a half or so.
If you ever want to see a masterclass in fitting a lot of text into a tiny box, just look at some Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Like,
ain't that the truth?
They really struggle to get that print all in there.
That is some small-ass text on those cards.
Yeah. But speaking of small-ass text on cards...
Oh, yeah.
I don't have a proper... I don't have a proper follow-up to that. But, I noticed that you are still playing Zenless Zone Zero. Yeah?
I am. I had committed to giving it the month, and I gave it that full month, and I've definitely gotten to a point where I'm a little closer to like a holding pattern, I'm gonna say.
A holding pattern?
How I engage with the game.
Okay.
Well, I'm out of story content, I'm out of most of that kind of stuff, but they keep doing like an event every week or so like there's a little something new to do other than just log in and get a couple things done.
Right. Dailies.
Yes. But I've been continuing to log in for dailies. I've been continuing to kind of rank up and start engaging with the end game of what is currently in there. And they keep putting out new characters, so it's a
gacha game. Of course,
that's what they gotta do. Yeah.
That's how they do it. I'm not playing Zenless Zone Zero anymore.
Yeah. I can see it.
So I guess, the longer term retrospect on Zenless Zone Zero, at least for me, is that the reason Genshin works for me is because the gameplay is very varied. There's it's multifaceted, and like there's the exploration, the combat. They have a lot of events and puzzles and other things that you're doing in this kind of open world. Zenless Zone Zero is kind of just the combat.
Yeah.
And you can make the argument that like the whole monitor stuff is another gameplay thing, but it's tedious. I don't like that. I want to get to the combat, and even then, like sometimes I'm doing combat, I'm like, I really am just like doing the same rotation for everything. It doesn't even really matter like what attribute this monster is, or I'm not really. There's not enough nuance with the current selection of characters and the availability of certain like resources that I feel like there's any nuance here, So I just kind of do the same thing over and over. And I mean, that's comforting for some people. I'm not here to like bash that. Like sometimes you want to just get into a brawl and use your powerful characters and, watch all the fun animations. There's nothing wrong with that. But Genshin just dropped 5.0 and there's a whole new area. And I'm like, what am I playing Zenless Zone Zero for?
Yeah, what is it? Natlan? Is that right?
Natlan. It's kind of like, maybe I should talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, no, jump into it a little bit. Let's hear about what's going on in Genshin, because, like, I agree with you. Zenless Zone Zero is definitely a little bit, one note isn't quite how I would put it. I feel like they are doing a lot with, if you get to some of the endgame stuff, they do a lot more with, like, the TV boxes in some really strange ways, where it's like, what the fuck? This is not what I came to this game for. But
yeah. So, to speak on 5.0 in Genshin Impact, there has been a lot of like lead up to this where the discussion has gone very heavily into like character design and what certain regions are supposed to be. And I think maybe I've touched on this in the last episode. I don't really remember, but that's kind of like where the height of it was. We were probably caught up in other stuff, but essentially, Natlan is supposed to be like representative of the Ring of Fire, if you think of geography terms. So like the volcanic active areas of our own world, and so it draws from a lot of cultures in the Ring of Fire, right? So we're talking like South America, Mesoamerica, Hawaii, the Pacific Islands. New Zealand, and that's kind of like where things get a little weird, because the term Natlan sounds very like, very South American native. It's like right there along like terms like Aztec or Toltec, and it the when they released the teaser talking about the different areas and like what to expect, they had like this Latin music and they showed a character who was brown, and I was like, oh, okay, well, it's cool that we're going to have like this area that's going to be representative of this kind of culture, and not really.
Oh.
Yeah.
I see.
I mean, okay, so one of the two characters that have come out along with the release of 5.0 are a lot better than what else has been showcased. I'll say that much. They're starting off on the right foot. There's a character named Mwalani, who is obviously derivative of like Hawaiian culture, and it's when I say derivative, I mean in not a complex way. Like, she likes to surf. She wears the swimsuit. She has like water animal motif, and she's brown. That's great. I'm glad that they have a brown character. It's very basic. There's not a lot of intrigue there. And what I will say is that unlike Raya and the Last Dragon, like, it's very explicitly a fantasy interpretation.
Sure.
So like there's some level of forgiveness I can give. And then the other character is Kachina, who is obviously based on like Mesoamerican native stuff. And her design is great. I think it's a really great character design. She's brown, also good. But here's the kicker about the character reveals. They've teased other characters, and the most important character of any given region is what they call the Archon character, who is essentially like the god of that area, right?
Okay, sure.
Well, the god of Natlan is white. She just straight up white. And, there's been a lot of discussion about, like, how it's supposed to be representative of the Ring of Fire, and, like, she's, like, the character who's representing, like, New Zealand. But it's like, well, why make her the person who's in charge of all this stuff? It's just weird. And, like, I mean, it doesn't bother me as much as other people, but it still bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the only white character who's been announced, and I'm not a, geographical expert to know how to cherry pick from all these actual cultures and, like, fit them into this space. But Genshin's kind of pulled this before with Sumeru, the place that was supposed to be, like, based upon Southeast Asia, specifically India. Not a lot of brown people. And they kind of, like, roped in Africa into that area because, like, they brought in, like, this desert, and it's like, oh, okay, it's like Egypt and, like, Egyptian and, ancient African cultures. And it's just like, yeah, here's one brown guy.
And it wasn't the Archon either?
No. The Archon was a little white girl.
Mm-hmm.
Love her to death. She a little white girl.
Well, has the game of Genshin really changed much in, like, the 5.0 stuff? Or
yeah, so they've been taking great strides to make the game more fresh. So they've really focused more on, like, characters' specific abilities for regions. So, like, the Fontaine characters from the last big 4.0 patch, they have a lot of, like, quirks that are really powerful within their own nation. And because of that, it allows them to have, like, more flexibility and incentivizes you to have them for those areas. And then, almost like the idea of standard in, like, a trading card game format, they are still usable but less powerful as you move into another region.
Okay.
But I think
that makes
that
sense.
for Natlan, there's a lot of focus on traversal. There's been other Genshin clones that have come out. In specific, there's a game called Wuthering Waves. I don't understand the name, but that's what it's called. And a lot of people were like, wow, the movement in this game feels so much better. And I feel like a lot of the things that happened in Natlan are, like, a direct response to that. So the two characters that I stated, the new ones for this area, Mwalani has a surfboard, but she can kind of, like, surf on land, but you just can't surf for as long, and it makes you very quick. And there's specific things that, like, you can only really do with either that character or a really bizarre gameplay mechanic where you possess a monster in that area, which also it feels kind of derivative of Wuthering Waves, because I guess that was also a mechanic in Wuthering Waves. So I don't really know, like, who's copying who or what's a derivative of what anymore. I just know that it's really weird. But it does make the game feel fresh again. I despite my reservations about choices in character design and representation, it's still a fun game. And I feel like they're trying, they're just not really understanding.
I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, I've been spending a bit of time playing some other stuff. For one, I picked up Peggle finally. I know you played a bit of that in the early access period, but it hit 1.0, which is why I finally picked it up. And I'm a little torn on it. For those of you who don't recall what Peggle is, it's kind of like a mix between Slay the Spire, but instead of card game, you are playing Peggle.
Which is Plinko, which is Pachinko.
Yes. And I'm having fun with it. I've done a bunch of runs now. many successful, few failures. But the main thing I've run into is that I guess I'm gonna compare this kind of directly to Slay the Spire because there's a lot of similarities in approach, not just from how you move through the game, but in how they're thinking about the game balance and getting items and relics and stuff. A lot of it really matches one to one. The thing is, Slay the Spire being about building these cards for your deck or making a deck of cards means that any given run, even if you're running into a lot of the same enemies, can feel fairly different because you do or don't have specific options that you find comfortable for dealing with it.
Hmm.
Peglin has the balls, which are kind of like your deck.
Well, we found the title, everybody. Peglin has the balls. All right.
Which are kind of like your deck, but they don't really affect how you engage with the game that much. They just affect how your ball engages with the board itself. And
Right.
so that means that the boards themselves feel like where a lot more of the variance needs to be. And there might just not be enough boards to feel like I'm seeing a lot of unique, fun, new things on a regular basis in there, which is kind of unfortunate because like so much about the game I actually do really enjoy. I'm having a lot of fun with engaging with it in general. There's some relics that really change the way and give you funny bonuses. I had a run earlier today, in fact, where I just ended up becoming kind of a tank in a weird way, but not with the shield mechanic, just by having maximum health increases from like the first extra ball I got in the game. I was just gaining max health.
Okay.
So by the end of the game, I had like 175 health or something, which was like really silly. But you know,
yeah, I think
every Peggle board is just another Peggle board, and it's the same ones I've seen like 20 times already.
Right, and I think what you're talking about is, if you think about it, Slay the Spire is kind of like a two-factor engagement, right? Where it's your deck versus the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Peglin is like a three-factor engagement where it's your quote-unquote deck versus the board versus the enemy. Because the board is not really the enemy, but it's how you achieve certain things to interact with the enemies that are there. And yeah, I think that it does get messy and it does get more complicated, and I think that there's some refinement still to work out there. I haven't played a lot of 1.0, but I did play a lot of early access, and yeah, that was something that was prevalent in that as well. Still a very charming game. I do hope to see more of it. I think that to mix up the boards is pretty important. Maybe introduce some different types of like pegs.
Yeah.
To like, I don't know. I mean I'm not a game designer, so I can only give input based on like what my perception was. But you basically only have like three types of pegs if you don't count the bombs. But like the bombs feel like such a different thing to me. So you have like the critical peg and the refresh peg, and like they interact with different levels of the game system, but they don't really interact that much with the board, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I would like to see more things be dynamic and have, you know, like, there's a lot of like, oh, turn this into this kind of peg. But, I don't know. I think that if you had more movement on the board itself, that would feel better.
Yeah. And I know there's some interesting things to do with the bosses, for example, where the placement that you shoot from changes in kind of meaningful ways. One of the first bosses is like a slime guy who, when he gets to you, his board kind of looks like a slime. You start shooting from inside the slime in the board instead of outside it once he gets to you and like puts your guy in him.
Right.
And like that stuff is neat and cool. But there's not a lot of that.
No.
And maybe even if they just said like, hey, here's some amount of movement you have to try to change the way you are angling shots, that might add a little bit to just make it feel a little fresher. But Yeah, I'm enjoying the game. I'm gonna play some more of it probably while watching YouTube videos and stuff, but I did have slightly higher hopes for it as someone who really did enjoy Peggle as much as I did.
Okay. Well, there's still time, Neil. We live in a world where games don't ever really stop being developed.
So true. And one of those games that has been in development for a very long time is, I hate saying it, but 2XKO. I like Project L so much more.
Yeah. The name sucks, but as someone who was in this alpha lab playtest, by the grace of Neil's invite, I think that it's good. I'm surprised at how much I enjoyed playing that. Now, that's not to say that I don't have my reservations. But in the interest of starting off on the right foot, I do want to talk about the things that I did enjoy very much about what 2XKO brought to the table.
It just has such bad mouthfeel.
It does, and you have so much you have, like, this is based in, like, lore that you've already established in other games. Like, do something with that. Don't just make it a bunch of letters and numbers. It looks like a fucking CAPTCHA. It looks like a CAPTCHA. That's why it bothers me.
Yeah.
It looks like a fucking CAPTCHA.
We need to make sure that you're human. What does this sequence of letters and numbers say?
Exactly. It's to stop robots from playing the game, I guess. It's a really ingenious security measure that they took. All right, so we'll get that out of the way. The first criticism, the name's still garbage.
Yeah.
I wrote as much as the input for the feedback. I was like, the name is bad. What I did like is, after I realized that Pulse was kind of like the simplified version, and I actually switched off of it, I was like, oh, okay. The combo expression in this game is really good. I feel like there's a lot of options and conversions and just different ways to essentially do the same thing. One of the most annoying things I find about fighting games is that once you know what's optimal and you learn to do it properly, that's just kind of what you do, right? Like, if you can confirm, you just go into your optimal, and then that's what you're going to do for the rest of your gaming career in this game. I feel like there's just so many different ways to achieve the same thing in 2XKO that I just spent so much time in the training just being like, oh, you can do it this way. Or, oh, you can wall bounce from this move. How much more can I get out of this? And in what pathway should I take? And yeah, I mean, obviously there's things that are optimal, and I guess optimal in this game would mean the most damage with the simplest inputs. And I think that it is very important to note that we do have simplified inputs in this game, and that's not just an option, but it's just kind of the default, where you don't have command inputs. Again, this was not based off, but it was from the same group of people who created Rising Thunder, which was a very similar kind of simplified input kind of game. But one thing that I do want to say about my expectation was that there would be cooldowns. Like, I thought they would be like Rising Thunder, like you'd use an ability and then it would be on cooldown. That's just kind of not a thing.
Yeah, this is much more, I guess, traditional in how it's doing the fighting game stuff without cooldowns.
It's surprising to me, because I thought that, like, considering they're trying to capture their League of Legends audience and trying to convince them to come over and play this fighting game, I really thought they would have retained that as a function. But no, it's just kind of like, if you can fit it into your frame data, then you can do it.
Fair. I know you're using Yasuo a lot. Who was the other person you ended up using?
I did a lot of Ari.
Okay.
But mostly for the assist.
Yeah, fair. I will say that my biggest complaints were probably about Ari.
Yeah.
Just because, and I know they like had been out there saying we made big changes to Ari. She's not what she used to be.
Well, I mean, I didn't want to begrudge it too much because the feeling that I got from Ari in this alpha lab was a lot like my feelings for Milia in Guilty Gear when Strive first landed. It's just like the idea of like it's just hard to tell where she's gonna be, and she has so much air control, and then like if she lands something, it converts to like this very very long combo. You know, that's just kind of a thing in anime fighters.
Well, that's been one of the things I guess there was a lot of talk about with this game was, hey, combo length seems crazy, and I generally didn't feel that way,
No, me neither.
except for when Ari was hitting me.
Yeah.
And the reason why specifically with Ari is she felt like she was able to convert in ways that no one else in the cast could from any hit anywhere on the screen, no matter what was happening, and it all seemed to go into the same. Doesn't matter where on the screen, you're getting brought all the way to the corner really slowly with the same looping combo.
Well,
If you're
I
holding
mean,
the buttons to tech out and they mess up, you're gonna tech out, but you can't respond. You have to continue blocking.
sure. I
And
mean,
it made it feel really oppressive in a way that like no one else did. Even Darius, who had frankly some real bullshit. When he hit me from really far away, he got like, 3 hits into super and that was it.
yeah. Well, okay, so that's another thing I want to talk about. Just as a general statement, I think that because you have like these really big bruiser characters like Ilaoi and Braum, who have generally shorter chains, but they get the same or if not more damage out of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of feels disparaging to characters that have to do a lot more to get the same kind of damage. And when the controls are already kind of simplified over other fighting games, it just makes it seem like an obvious pick to pick the character who gets the most damage out of the least amount of inputs, because it's just easier to confirm, right? And my enjoyment of the game was very much about like the creativity in the way that you decide to like go about your bread and butter and your neutral and all the other aspects, but it didn't feel rewarding necessarily because of that. And again, like these bruiser characters not only like get more damage for less inputs, but they also tend to have more health.
Ari was definitely the, hey, can I touch of death her character?
I mean, I think that was a warranted exploration, because you definitely want to get rid of Ari. So what would you change? What would you add?
So my big things were kind of about Ari. It really just felt like her little fireball Rekka thing was just too much of the thing she does, and if it works at all, she just does the same thing for 20 seconds. That was like kind of my big thing. Honestly, a lot of the other stuff I felt pretty good about. There was a few things. I think the touch of deaths are a little bit too easy in general. And that's coming from if they want this to be a 2v2 game, you don't want one of the players to get hit once and not be able to play the game.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel good.
Well, I mean, they have certain things that allow you to still interact with the match, but yeah, it's
yeah, but
not a great feeling.
It's not a great feeling, and they have said like we're not looking for that many touch of deaths. We want them to be rare. Apparently, there was a bug with Ari's super good assist, which didn't apply scaling, which is part of why touch of deaths were so easy with her. They were like, yeah, this is a bug, which is like, okay, sure, whatever, it's an alpha.
Yeah, no, there was definitely so Yasuo has, if you hold down his special one, he charges to the opposite side, so it's an on the ground cross up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you time it right, you can have Ari come out at the same exact time and lock them down, and it just does an absurd amount of damage because there's no scaling.
Yeah.
It's basically like the maximum amount of damage that you can get. And it's pretty disgusting, and I'm glad that they recognize that as a bug.
Really the thing I want to say that's like positive about this game though, Because I do think this game feels very good for still being something we're not going to see a 1.0 of until sometime next year. I'm somebody who doesn't necessarily spend a lot of time in the lab. I'm not much of a lab monster in the training mode. Outside of a couple of kind of specific things. Way back in the day, one of the reasons I said Rising Thunder is a game I liked so much was because it was a game where I felt like going into the lab myself was something that was rewarding for me. I felt that a little bit with Old Ed in Street Fighter V.
Okay.
And I actually felt it quite a bit in 2XKO. I spent more time in the lab just being like, does this work? And trying something out than I have in any time in Street Fighter 6, for example.
Yeah, and you know why that is, right?
I know one big piece of why.
It's because execution is less of a factor.
Correct. It's a huge part for me.
Like, experimenting is always a pain when you have to do a high-level execution.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's hard to tell whether something works or not, or if you're just not performing correctly.
Exactly. And so that puts me in a situation with this game where I was going like, I can just go into the lab and I can mess around. I was using Braum Darius, and I found a combo that was doing 1,060 something damage. Never was going to pull it off in a real match because, you know, I get tense, I get jittery, whatever. But the fact that I went into a lab and found something that touch of death everyone except Braum and Alawi, me not going online and seeing like, ooh, what are some crazy things I can do? Just going like, oh, if I start with this charged thing on this character, and then I can do this combo into a tag launcher, bring them back down, do this other thing, go into a super with a weird tag so that I can combo off the super into another super and then super a third time and just do a shitload of damage. And it's like, I'm never going to really do it. But the fact that I could find it and not feel like I was wasting my time or that it was hard to even figure out whether it's possible was really rewarding for me. And so that says a lot for me in how much I might want to invest in this game in the future.
Yeah, no, it was, for me, it was the same thing where it was kind of like, yeah, I enjoyed going into matches and playing with you, but there was a joy of discovery there. And a big part of that is because the game is like in an alpha. You know, there wasn't a ton of information out there. And so when you landed something unexpectedly, it was like, oh, okay. And, I don't know. Again, a large part of that is execution. When you have a character who does have very long, extended combos like Yasuo, it can be a pain to like set things up and like determine whether or not something's viable. But because the execution is so much easier, it does make you want to try.
And as far as playing Yasuo, I know in the alpha, he was definitely the most complex character for how to perform his combos and such. Did you find him particularly rewarding to do like a bunch of stance cancels and all that
Absolutely.
kind of stuff?
I did not want to play any other character. I literally did not learn another character. I just pick Ari for the assist.
Fair.
But yeah, it was, so again, I thought that going into this, it would be a very simplified fighting game. And what I found out was that the execution is a lot simpler, but the different routes that you can take and the potential for like individuality and, again, like expression in your gameplay is all there. And to see that in the alpha was very important to me. But again, like what I do want to talk about is things that I would change or add.
Yeah.
Snap out. Please add snap out to this game. And I understand why you don't have it. So snap out is a Marvel term. It's the idea of like using a bar to force the other character out. The reason it's not in this game is because then the other character would have to be, or the other player, I suppose, would have to be paying constant attention, but that's kind of like what you should be doing anyway. Um, and yeah, I mean, if there's a character who's considered more of a problem, or a character that you think that you have the better matchup for, I think that it's important to be able to force that option.
I feel like the snap out thing makes a lot of sense about why it's not in this. I feel like if they were to add snap out, the thing that they would have to do is like, yeah, you can force the other person in, but you're basically resetting to neutral in doing so. The part where snap out gets too crazy in a game where potentially it's a different person, if you're snapping out and then they are just put immediately into this like really tricky mix-up situation where they can't even attempt to respond to it really.
Okay, well then
would feel bad.
The way that I would balance that then is it will use your burst.
Mm-hmm.
So you can you can either have your burst or you can use it as a snap out.
I could see that. If the burst could be used in two ways like that, I could see it.
I mean, it's a very like high risk maneuver to use your burst because that's going to save your ass later.
Exactly.
So, you could either use it as an offensive or a defensive. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
Honestly, one of the big things for me was just defensive mechanics in general.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of them. I wasn't very good at using them, but there are moves in this game that feel like they are built around the access to those mechanics. And too many of them are barred behind meter for the start of the game for me.
I think that there's just too many. I think that they need to simplify that. I don't think you need I don't think you necessarily need like a quick step, but you definitely need to like lower the cost of push block. I think that parry should be cheaper as well. I'm not sure like what the explicit cost would be, but it's just too high risk to want to parry in this game.
Well, that's one of the ones I mean. It's like very specifically Darius's like cleaving moves feel like they are built around people being able to parry them because they have a pretty like easy to parry thing once you understand what you're looking for. The issue is like right at the start of the game, you don't have access to parry because you don't have meter, which means Darius can just fucking spam that shit, put you in a really bad situation right off the bat, and you don't really have the responses because it feels like that move is balanced around the answer being parry. Yeah.
I mean, I think that if you are a high-level player of this game, of which right now there exists no one of that kind of caliber, but you hedge your things, you hedge your rounds on higher risk and higher reward because you become just utterly familiar with how things work. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, this is going to get a lot more complicated as more characters end up in this mix, and knowing that this is kind of the fighting game for League of Legends, there's a large amount of characters that can be adapted. Is there a character that you'd like to see, Neil, based on your memory of League of Legends?
I mean, I want to see Vi, just because punch fun.
I mean, it's an obvious choice.
And also, having played a lot of Rising Thunder, the character I mained in that feels like it would probably be the Vi character. Like, Vi would fit into that model pretty easily.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to see that. How about you?
Well, to talk about the snap out or snap back function of Marvel, maybe you could tie that into a specific character. Maybe you can get Singed in there and have flip the characters out of the arena.
Flip a character out, the other person has to come in. That'd be very funny as just a thing one person could do. I could see it if it was tied to a super.
Yeah, why not?
Like Singed has a super that does that. That would be very funny.
Yeah, it's a character who's based around launchers. He does a lot with launching and tagging. He does a lot of setup. He's got the goo. It's like a weird defensive zoner.
The last thing I want to say about this game, though, is about the multiplayer 2v2 modes. Or I guess 2v1 also, but just the playing with a friend modes. You and I tried to do a little bit of it. We definitely struggled for a couple of reasons. One being, both of us were pretty new to the game. Another one being we had some microphone issues, making communication pretty rough, and communication definitely helps. um, but what did you feel about it in general?
I think the important takeaway is that we got better. The first time that we hopped on, it was like a mess. We didn't even know, like, we weren't super aware of when it was our turn to play. We weren't using our burst for the other person. We weren't, able to time assists properly, but it got better. It's just a different facet of a different game that needs to be learned in order to utilize correctly. I can see the intrigue of this as a competitive thing. I think that there's a lot of a prestige to be had if, like, you are known to be a really good in sync pair. Like Pacific Rim style, you're fully synced up. It's certainly something that I would be interested in watching. Obviously this game is gonna be at all the big tournaments once it lands, and I'd be interested in seeing, like, the big names in fighting games, like who gets teamed up with who. There's a lot of interest there. As far as, like, my own enjoyment of it, I enjoy it if merely it means I can focus on learning one character.
I guess that's fair.
I
don't... Go ahead.
I don't have a lot of interest in, like, spending and splitting my brain trying to learn two characters, which is one of the reasons that I never really got into, like, the Dragon Ball FighterZ Z game and why I didn't stick with Marvel that much. It's, when the character that I want to play is already complicated, the last thing I want to do is, like, muddle that by trying to learn yet another complicated character, because I don't like playing simple characters, Neil. I'm just I want to play two complicated characters, but I don't got the capacity for that right now.
Fair. I tried to play a lot more duos than I got to. We did a little bit. I went on a mission, though, to just play some duos. And so I found some random fucking person just in a lobby. I was just like, hey, I'm looking for a duo. And this person's like, 20 minutes later, was like, oh, are you still looking? I was like, yeah, let's fucking do it. So me and just some random guy. And I will say, we had a rough time of it at the start, but even without communication, we managed to start doing some stuff that felt pretty good and pretty in sync in a way that I was surprised by. I think double assist is pretty important for that kind of play, if for no other reason, just because if you can assist twice, you can, in a sense, cover yourself, and it gives your partner more time to see what's going on, make a real decision about whether or not to try to put you in or capitalize on what you do. So without communication, that felt very, very vital. But it was something that also felt to me like I can see a path here to try to get friends into fighting games in a way that is way harder to do when all I can do is beat them up because I'm just better at the game than them and we can only fight 1v1.
Well, I mean, just to talk about you picking a random person and, like, learning to play with them, there's some intrigue there too, because like, when you think of it that way, you're not having to just get a read on what your opponent is doing, but you also have to have a read on what your partner's doing.
Yep.
And if you can intuit that, that's just as important of a skill for a game like this.
Yeah. And getting a lot better at, like, understanding when tag launchers might be happening in my partner's combo so I can be ready for it. That kind of stuff is just going to come with time, and familiarity with the game, of course. But I do really look forward to this game, if for no other reason, like, my own enjoyment going into the lab and stuff was big, but also seeing if any of my friends who, they picked up things like Guilty Gear but maybe don't really invest in them and try to play them as much as someone like I have. I can see this game working for them, but like you said at the beginning, this game is not pulling any punches with being a fighting game.
Yeah, I think that was my main concern.
It's going to still have that heavy lift, but I feel like that heavy lift is going to be maybe a little easier for some newer people if they have a friend who can help lift them rather than just the fighting against them and always losing thing, because that's frustrating. I know it can be.
Well, get good.
Yeah,
that's a skill issue. But yeah, no, I do hope that it does bring a lot of new blood into the fighting game scene. If only for it to be people for me to beat up and discourage. Okay, so I don't know if there's any other game. I know you played other games, Neil.
Okay. It's okay. We're going to talk about it another time because we have a month of other stuff to catch up on.
Yeah, I mean, where to start even?
We were just talking about fighting games, so I want to start with Evo.
Oh, right.
It was a month ago. People won, people lost. The big things I want to talk about are kind of just two things for me. Number one, congratulations to Punk on winning Street Fighter 6. They got second place in Street Fighter 5 like 7 years ago or something and had still never managed to actually win Evo. So seeing them get emotional up on stage and everything, I thought was really, really fun to see and like satisfying to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of those things that makes me think that, oh, I kind of understand why people like sports. You know?
For sure.
It's not necessarily what happens out there on the field, but the stories behind the people themselves. And that's certainly the case with Punk. You know, Punk's been in the scene, just a high-level performer, like, at everything he goes to.
He basically had won everything except Evo over the last 7 years.
Yeah. and even when Punk isn't winning Evo, their Punk is in, like, the top 10, like, every year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely congratulations to Punk. But the bigger win was definitely for the United States.
Yeah. For those who don't know, this was like the other kind of big piece about it. Evo has been hosted in the United States since its inception. It was created by some Americans, it became big, etc.
Yeah.
But outside of the first something like 5 years, with Street Fighter specifically, no American had won the current Street Fighter in like 20-something years, basically.
I think it was been a long time.
It was before Street Fighter 3.
Yeah.
So, like, having an American actually win it, the main Street Fighter game, for the first time in that long is really exciting just from a like, if you follow this stuff kind of position of, like, you know, North America has always had a lot of really strong people in it, but if people are saying what's the strongest region, no one would ever say America because America would never win.
Yeah, like, it definitely reminds me.
That.
It definitely reminds me of the run that Long Island Joe had in Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
How he was like the last United States player to like be clinging on, and everybody was rooting him on. And I mean, obviously he wasn't able to pull it out, but you know, now he's the MC for a lot of these things.
I know, right?
Like he has become the face simply because he has been able to hold it out for the United States. So yeah, you know, that was great. What did you think about Third Strike? Did you watch the Third Strike stuff?
I did not watch Third Strike except for the one person playing Hugo and dancing on the fucking stage and being the biggest personality. I saw a few of his highlights, which were very exciting, but yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing.
Yeah, Hi Al, he's a character. And, you know, a lot of people would say, like, it's a mind games thing, and there might be that component to it, but the dude just really enjoys himself. Yeah. And he's kind of like a animal with too much energy who doesn't know where to put it, and so he does all these insane, crazy things up on stage, but you can't argue that against the idea that he has the skills to back that up, because, oh my god, the things this guy was pulling off, the air parries, the conversions, and of course, what is now ostensibly Evo Moment 38. Look it up if you're not familiar, and preferably with a video explaining what's going on, because it might be a little abstract if you're not familiar, but boy, that was like a 1 in a million moment. Which is why it's Evo Moment 38.
Hearing the commentators going like, "What? He used a move no one uses because it's so bad, but it went over the super."
Yeah, so it's like a short hop move that you do on the ground that has such a horrible on block recovery, but it's actually faster than jumping, right? Like, because it's a short hop, even though there's longer recovery frames, you can act sooner than if you jump. And, like, he just knew that if he used that move, his opponent would go under him, and he would have the time to recover and actually punish.
Yeah,
and
it was wild.
It's insane. Go watch it. But before we move on from fighting games, I do want to mention that I do have a hitbox now. It's not like a hitbox, but it's this like really small format. Oop, I dropped it. But it's called a Hout 42 is the brand, and I got one that has a kind of like a WASD layout. Back in the day, if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, when I was playing Street Fighter 4, I was a keyboard warrior. And so
I used 2 in the world.
One of the 2 in the world, and boy, did I like playing Gen. And trying to switch to stick on a charge character was really difficult. And, that was an uphill battle for me. So having my hands on what is ostensibly a keyboard, literally with Cherry MX switches in it. Like, it's the actuators for this input are the same as the keyboard. And it feels really good. And I guess the main thing for me, like, yeah, I can still play on stick. And when I first started playing 2XKO, I didn't have it yet. I actually got it because I was like, oh, I'm here, I am playing a fighting game. Might as well try out this other thing. The other thing for it is not necessarily the modality of the input, but just because it's so small and flat, I can put it in my backpack and not have to worry about anything.
Nice.
Like, the problem with a fight stick is the stick. It sticks out, as you would expect from the name, and it makes it really awkward to haul anywhere. It's just an elegant solution to just not have a stick.
I commit while playing 2XKO to the gamepad. I was playing that game on just a regular Xbox gamepad hooked up to my computer.
Would you ever consider a hitbox-style controller, Neil?
Probably not.
Oh.
But I can see why people like them. And I'm not going to convert to gamepad for like Street Fighter or anything. I'm still going to be using my fight stick for that. But for 2XKO, I was committing to the gamepad. And it was working once I got used to it. Last thing about Evo. Guilty Gear announced a Season 4. And they're doing a guest character.
They sure are.
Fucking Lucy from the Cyberpunk anime. And look, she looks like she's gonna fit into a Guilty Gear game perfectly fine. The thing that fucking gets me is she's the fucking hacker in that anime. She spends half that anime in a bathtub connected to a computer.
A bathtub full of ice.
Is she the fucking fighting person?
Yeah, that is a weird decision. I'm not really sure what the logic is there. I mean, you say that Lucy would fit into the Guilty
like
Gear Strive style. Yeah, no, she does fit, but so would any of the other characters from that show.
Yeah, fair.
I mean, I guess maybe not as much. I guess so. I don't know. I didn't watch the Cyberpunk anime, so I don't have a big attachment to any of those characters, but I do know that she was the hacker, and I played Cyberpunk, and that would be the least likely person that I would have elected. into a fighting game. But you know what? Guilty Gear's a weird beast. We have people who fight in weird ways, so I don't know. Maybe we'll see something very cool and interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Other than that, we've had some other big news.
We're gonna go a little long on this one just because we have to cover some ground here.
Gamescom happened out in Germany. Opening Night Live, another Keighley event. Wasn't very good. It opened with Borderlands 4, and it sounded like nobody even in the audience gave a shit.
Yeah,
I don't really remember anything else they showed, because frankly, most of it was stuff we knew about or not very exciting.
Yeah. I mean, it's the state of AAA, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so wait, I want to follow up on something that when we were watching Summer Game Fest.
Okay.
So, Concord.
Mm-hmm.
I specifically called that game. I was like, this game looks like it's so derivative and lacks, any sort of style. It's homogenized. They're going for photorealistic. The character designs don't seem interesting or inspired. Lo and behold, Concord finally came out, and this is a game with, I think they cited like I don't know what the millions was, but a lot of millions of dollars.
Did it come out? I knew they did
Yes, it came out.
They did like a beta for it. I didn't realize it had actually released. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it came out to to a fanfare of farts.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently analysts have estimated that it's only sold 25,000 units. It had peaked at a little more than 600 concurrent players. This was, I think the name of the studio is like Firewalk Games or Firewalk Studios or something. They had been working on this game for like 8 years. And like 2 years from launch, Sony bought the studio. They're fucked.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the studio sticking around. And there's just not a lot of understanding here. And, there people have been saying like, well, maybe stop shitting on games that people worked hard on. I understand where you're coming from, but when you have so many hero shooters out, like there's a Marvel one now. The same people are making a Star Wars one. We have Valorant. We have Overwatch. We have so many hero shooters. I'm literally got a key from Valve for their hero shooter, Deadlock, which I haven't had time to sit down and play. Hero shooters are everywhere, and if you think that you're going to be able to break into the game, if you'll excuse the pun, with a hero shooter without having some serious chops, you're barking up the wrong tree. And
the only thing
proves
I've really heard about Concord is it's fine and does nothing better than one of the other ones.
Yeah.
So there's no standout thing about Concord for to make you want to do that one instead of a different one.
Yeah.
Which is really unfortunate.
I really don't know what they were expecting, but I think that maybe this was too big of a ship to like write the course on. But the 8 years, man, like don't you have any market analysis to be like, maybe this isn't what people are looking for? Like, I hadn't heard of it. I hadn't heard of it before Summer Game Fest, and when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is a game that's not going to be coming out for many years, and then it just did.
Yeah.
And to no accolade or fanfare. And yeah. What I'm saying is AAA games, they need identity, and Concord is the proof.
Mm-hmm. So Opening Night Live happened. I don't remember anything else from it. Like I said, Nintendo did a indie and partner showcase on the same day.
Yeah, no Silk Song.
No Silk Song. That's how I found out Peggle hit 1.0, which is why I picked it up.
Okay.
Anything else jump out to you? There was like a Castlevania thing that looked neat because it was some of the Castlevania games that haven't really made it off of, I think it's like the 2D or the DS.
Right. They did a collection of like Portrait of Ruin, Order of Ecclesia, and Dawn of Sorrow. Three really great games. Like there was a kind of a Castlevania renaissance around the DS, 3DS, just because like again, you know, when we talk about consoles, the discussion nowadays seems to be very much about power, like the ability to reproduce photorealism and, you know, fancy effects and lighting. When you force developers to use technology that isn't necessarily cutting edge, it allows them to, you know, focus on other things. And looking back on that era, it was abundantly clear like why the DS was so successful. There was a lot of talent out there who knew how to develop games like that. And those games were, in fact, Dawn of Sorrow, Portrait of Ruin, and Order of Ecclesia. I played all three all the way through. Very great games. Like, if you like Castlevania, you should grab that. My concern is that there are a lot of, like, gimmicky things involving stylus and touch controls that I don't know how they plan on handling them. I mean, they had the Switch release. I don't know if this was also concurrently released on other things.
Me either.
But knowing Konami, probably. It's just like, how do you handle like drawing a glyph on the screen in a timely manner so that the boss doesn't regenerate? You know, how do you control a second character if you are on a gamepad? And, you know, how do you use like little swingy magnesis glyphs to like jump from thing to thing if like the input was based on touch? Those are the concerns for me. And, you know, I don't have a lot of faith in Konami when it comes to digging up old things and trying to sell them again.
I don't have much faith in Konami in general, but yeah, I hear you.
I've heard good things about this. The speedrunner Rom Scout had started streaming again because of this.
Wild.
He was one of the first speedrunners that I remember watching for the sake of speedrunning. And the dude, like, kind of dropped off the face of the earth. And then, like, 3 days ago, right after the announcement and the fact that it was dropping same day, I looked, and there he was, streaming.
Wild.
So, you know, some things can be revived from the dead, and it's not bad. I think that I would like to see new Castlevania stuff, but, you know, that's a monkey paw wish, Neil.
Fair. Anything else from the Nintendo stuff that jumped out to you?
I mean, we got a lot of comfy games.
True.
Comfy, cute games. I think that there's two extremes in the game development in the year of our Lord 2024, and that is garbage AAA coattail chasing nonsense, and cozy, comfy indie game. Low stakes, chill out, have a good time. Yeah. Now, in between there, I did notice that there was at least one game that was intriguing enough that I remember the name, which is a big feat for me. I don't have the best memory for things like that. But Morsels had such an interesting visual and breadth of gameplay in the trailer that I was like, this looks like something that I should probably keep on my radar. Do you remember that? It was like, it's kind of like really, really low-res pixel with lots of filters, but also claymation, and also, like, there's 3D renders. It's very mixed media, you know? And it
I do kind of remember that one. The one, yeah.
It's kind of like a roguelite style game, I guess, but also it seemed like it was a bunch of other games. So it's intriguing at the very least, and I remember the name, which is more than I can say for most of the stuff from these presentations.
Well, the last thing I wanted to make sure to hit was kind of an update. Y'all might remember Tango Gameworks, the people behind Hi-Fi Rush, a game I thought was very good last year, and was dropped by Microsoft suddenly. They are, in fact, getting purchased by Krafton now, along with the Hi-Fi Rush IP. Krafton, for those who don't remember, are the people who continue to do uh PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds.
Weird.
Fucking weird. But hey, if Tango Gameworks gets to keep doing what they do, hopefully not like everybody was laid off and getting rehired. I'm not super sure the timing on all that. I just know Tango Gameworks apparently getting purchased by Krafton now, so.
We live in unsteady seas in the world of the video game industry, and this is the port in the storm for them. So I'm glad that they found something. I hope it works out. I hope they get to keep making games.
Me too.
But yeah, that's weird.
Alright, Matt. I think we should probably say goodbye, huh?
Not yet, Neil. Not yet.
No? Oh, I'm starting to get kind of sweaty.
Well, me too.
Okay.
And that's
Tell me
exactly
why
why
not?
we're...
Why not yet?
Well, we needed to get sweaty before we could talk about the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 trailer.
I'm gonna blow your mind.
You haven't
I
seen
haven't
it?
actually watched it yet.
Jesus Christ, Neil.
I've been busy. I had company.
You've been busy? You've been busy?
Yeah, I know.
I had the time. I had the time to watch it.
Alright, I'll watch it right now. Hang on.
Okay. Let's watch
Sonic
it together.
3 trailer.
Let's do the live reaction.
I'm not gonna bother editing it in, but okay. Okay. There you go.
All right,
I
so
watched it.
what's your opinion, Neil? What do you think?
Alright. It's gonna be a lot better than the Knuckles show.
Okay. I mean, that's a low bar, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that they made Robotnik fat.
Yeah, me too. It's nice to see that they're slowly moving him towards his I guess iconic look.
His final evolution and true self. Yeah, it was funny because in the last movie, he got the facial hair right. And in this one, they made him fat.
Yep. I have a feeling it's going to be better than the second movie. I remember most of the second movie I thought was pretty bad.
I mean, I think that the humor was there.
And I think
just
the
feel
humor will
like
be there for this one too. I'm just hoping that story-wise it's a little better than number 2.
I'm just hoping that Rouge shows up and they give her the physics, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, is that what you're hoping for?
I mean, it's the next part, right? Like, where's Amy? Where's Rouge? Where's Big the Cat? I want Big the Cat.
Yeah, why don't we have any of the ladies? We only have the boys so far.
Seems a little misogynistic, Seika. Just saying.
So true,
anyway,
so true.
Anyway, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
If you want to see jiggle physics in the next Sonic movie, then please leave a comment in the video below, and maybe we'll read it.
Audio Games is hosted and produced by Matthew Lane and Neil Jimenez. Our theme music is Recharging by Gooset. If you'd like to reach out to us, please email us at audiogamespodcast@gmail.com. Are you still watching any anime? Still watching Elusive Prince or whatever?
Bro, I don't got no time.
That's fair.
Also, I wasn't that impressed by Elusive Prince from what I saw. I watched 2
Samurai,
episodes.
that's
I was
what it
like,
was. Elusive Samurai.
Elusive, yes, Samurai. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I got bad vibes from that show.
Fair.
Like, it's the little guy. He's really, he's like blushing and like
Constantly.
super into. Yeah, he's like super into like being in danger, and it's just like, yeah, I get that that's like your thing, but also like it kind of flies in the face of a lot of the drama that's going on around you.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I've kept watching it, and there's been some really, really awesome animation.
Great.
And the story and stuff is still just kind of eh.
Well, I mean, it's based on like a historical account.
Yeah.
Who knows what's actually happened and what's fiction, but clearly this is very fiction.